Hey guys, my Fonzie is named... shit. Take 29, Barker, and action. Hey guys, it's Fonzie, and I would like to introduce you to my podcast, Ask Fonzie Anything. So today I want to introduce myself, and I want to start with some backstory about me, because I think it'll give y'all a chance to get to know me, and I want to make my best effort to give y'all some history behind the name, so that hopefully you'll fall in love with me and come back every week. I'm also going to give you a quick rundown about the podcast itself, the topics I'll be covering, the show's different main segments, the schedule so that you'll know exactly what days of the week that you can expect new episodes, and then later on I'll give y'all some contact info so that you can write in with some questions, requests, discussion, and episode topics, and send me letters seeking advice like that old Ask Abby column in the newspaper. You know what I'm talking about? Also, I would like to apologize in advance for how annoying my voice is. I thought all the people that told me I was annoying my whole life were just being haters. I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. I've tried. It's actually one of the reasons I took so long to make this podcast, because I was hearing myself over and over and over again, and I've come to terms with it. There's nothing I can do about it. This is probably why I don't date a lot of women. My voice is higher than theirs is. Because from, looking at me, I look like this macho lumberjack, no wax, because I'll cut myself because I'm accident prone. But I got the beard, I got the rugged face, I got the eye circle baggy things that make me look like I've seen some shit, like I was in Nam. And then you hear my voice and it's like, oh, Ross Matthews, okay, got it. He gay. And in post-op, I've been trying to speak down here, or speaking with my throat and not my nose, and trying to make myself sound more masculine for the masses, because who wants to listen to a podcast with someone whose voice is grating? And I'm sorry, y'all are gonna have to put up with it. How do y'all think I feel? I have to live my life 70 years if I'm lucky with this voice. It's terrible. I hate it. Okay, now that I've had a mental breakdown about my voice, let's pay some bills and get the show started. And we're back. Okay, before we get to talking about me, I really just want to, sit down with y'all and tell y'all what y'all can expect. And honestly, expect the unexpected with me. Because I'm going to talk about anything, everything, all the things, none of the things, some of the things. I'm really just going to talk. That's one of the reasons I began this podcast to begin with, because I realized that I have an opinion on everything. I know all kinds of stuff, and it seems to me that anytime someone has a problem, they come to me about it, and they ask me what I think they should do, so I tell them what I think they should do, and the look on their face is always a look of, damn, this dude knows what the fuck is up. His life's gotta be easy or something, because he's got all this wisdom. One day I was talking to a coworker at a pet food factory that I used to work at, and, she was asking me what she should do about this and what she should do about that, and I told her what the zhuzh was, and she said, how do you know all of this stuff? And I said, it's wisdom, baby. I ain't get this old not knowing nothing. And she said, bitch, you're 23. I don't know. It's both a blessing and a curse to be this wise, this young of an age, but I'm going to use it to my advantage and to the advantage of the world, because I'm a firm believer in the idea that you learn best from your own mistakes, but if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, you'll save yourself some time. Write that down. It's like, that one was free. The next one's I'm going to charge y'all. Anyway, yeah, I'm really going to talk about all kinds of topics. I have an opinion on everything, and some of these are going to be, my personal opinion. I have some segments, one of which is called Let Me Explain, and I conceptualized this segment based on the idea that a lot of people nowadays are so uninformed about what's going on in the world, because they are either getting their information from biased sources, or because the media is so counterproductive about informing people. The average person who's got a mortgage to fucking worry about and some kids to feed and a job to keep doesn't have time to worry about, which news media outlet is credible and trustworthy and unbiased and isn't trying to sell you a load of shit or scare you into submission. And I created this podcast with that in mind. Where can someone go to hear about what's going on in the world, opinion-wise, government, world, science, tech, music, all of that other good stuff, all of those things? Where can someone go to hear about that and, listen to an unbiased take on it? Now, of course, I'm going to throw a little bit of my sass in there, but when it comes to the news, some people aren't educated because they don't have the time, and whatever little time that they do have to try and care about what's going on, they, are met with roadblocks of fake news. And when I say fake news, I'd hate to use a conservative term because I feel like fake news was used to seed mistrust in media as a whole. But I can't tell you how many times I scroll through Facebook and I see straight up lies masquerading as truths on my timeline. And there was a study that showed that a huge majority of the American population gets their news from Facebook. And an even larger percentage of people only ever see the headline. Like, they don't click the link to see if it's not bullshit or not. They see the headline, they share that to their friends, they write their little caption with their opinion on what's going on, everything that they formed a basis for in the half sentence that they read in 2 seconds. I think that's how the modern day American citizens' ideology and intelligence has been eroded because of stuff like propagandized social media accounts and social media postings that kind of allow the American public to kind of fester in a vacuum of untruth. And I don't think that's right. I think that everyone deserves a right to be informed. And if I, by speaking on what's going on in a clear way, in a concise way, and in a way that at first isn't biased, because of course I want to tell y'all what's going on. I want to tell y'all at face value what the right's opinion on this issue is, what the left's opinion on this issue is, why there's a conflict, and what I think about it. And that's later on in me telling you about something. You will see some bias because, I have an opinion. I'm a human being. But I'm going to give it to you straight up and blunt because that's just me. If you know me, you know that about me. You know that I'm very blunt. I'm going to tell you what's what, what's up, and all of that other good stuff. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. An example, I have an episode where I talk about gun violence in America and what I think we could do to fix it. I tell people the statistics, I tell people the facts, and then I tell people what I think. And that's where some bias can come in, but it's middle of the road bias. It isn't too far conservative of an ideology or a thought, and it's not too far left where someone that's kind of liberal, which I consider myself, would say something like, ban all guns, when I myself am a Texas Democrat and I own guns. I like my guns. I have a lot of them. There's more guns in this house than people. I'm going to give you how both sides feel about it, and then I'm going to tell you what I feel about it. Personally, when it comes to gun violence, I think that you can be pro-gun and anti-little babies getting shot in the face at school. You know what I mean? Like, I think we can live somewhere in the middle. But what I do know is if someone like me, someone crazy out their goddamn mind, can get a gun in this country, we need to do something. Fonzie 2032. That's one of the reasons that I made the podcast. That will be Let Me Explain. That's one of the segments where I just kind of, let me explain to you the difference between sex and gender and why this conversation is going on, what the points are, what this side is saying, what that side is saying, and I'm going to give you everything that you need so that you can form your own opinion on what's going on. And you can form that opinion armed with facts and armed with unbiased reporting. And I think that that would be healthy. And if only 2 people, if I only ever reach 2 people whose opinion they can create on their own based on what I've said about anything, this podcast would have served its purpose. The other segment I have planned out is called Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day. It's something that I've been doing for a very long time on Facebook, and I'm just going to, co-opt it into the podcast. I think that Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day deserves to exist here. I think it should exist on the podcast because, people need to hear it. And I think that it could be beneficial to the podcast listeners that they hear the wisdom of the day on whatever I decide to speak about. Whenever the podcast gets popular, and if enough people bug me for it, Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day will eventually be its own show. I might do something similar to the John Maxwell Minute with Maxwell experience with the email subscription service. That sounded like a good idea to me, so I think I'm going to do that if enough people decide they want to bug me about it, and there's enough interest in that. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about the podcast so far. I'm really just going to talk all kinds of shit. I'm going to say whatever I want. I'm going to throw in some serious stuff. I'm going to throw in some fun stuff. We're going to talk about everything, all of the things. I might bring some guests on. In fact, I have a few interviews planned out, and I think those are going to be fun. I'm just going to kind of go with the flow because that's what I do on a regular basis. And I really want the podcast to be representative of me, and I am like the wind. I'm gonna go all the ways, whichever ways, none of the ways. And now some backstory. My name is Fonzie. I was born in Abilene, Texas. Shout out to Cracktown. And I think they do meth too, actually. But anyway, I was born in Hendricks Hospital on the north side of town, second floor, about 1 p.m. in high hell fucking June. My mother was a single parent. I was born to a single mother. My dad, pretty much absent. I didn't really even meet him until I was 3 or 4 or so. I did meet my dad's parents and my dad's sister when I was 2 years old. I created a relationship with them beforehand. And we can talk about that more later. But, I kind of was raised by my mother mostly. Most of my upbringing was my mother, and I kind of was this weird rope in a tug-of-war game that went on between my mother and my dad for a lot of my childhood. And, life was simple. Here and there, we moved around a lot. I remember moving around a lot, and I think that instability, kind of creates holes in people. And for me, that instability manifested as mental health later on in life. But I kind of had a normal single parent. I kind of had the normal life that someone with a single parent had. 2 Christmases. Went with the dad for the summer when he wasn't in prison or in jail or something. Went to school during the year with my mother. She worked 2, 3, 4 jobs. She was our primary caregiver, but she was always working, trying to keep us fed and stuff, and clothes on us and whatnot, so we weren't running around like naked idiots. And I didn't see my mom a whole lot, so I think that could be a reason that mine and her relationship isn't necessarily the relationship that one has with their mother, even, because in the beginning my father was absent, and I kind of wish it would have stayed that way. My mother was a single parent. I lived between the two of them, and after I was 2 or 3 and I first met my father, which I call him by his name now. I call him David. But for the purpose of this podcast and y'all understanding what's going on, if I would have just been like, yeah, my mom, David, would have thought he was like my stepdad or something. So I call him David because he never really was a father to me. He was, it sounds shitty to say, but you don't expect, and there shouldn't be a place that exists where a kid sees their biological father as this person only necessary to facilitate his existence. And to me, that's what he was. And I think that's one of the ways in which I'm broken, because when I look at my parents, sometimes, not always, sometimes, I'm getting better about it, but I used to see them as just people that were in charge of making an adult so that I could be whatever someday. 2 people I was assigned to, and they were in charge of making sure I didn't die before I became president. That was my idea of what was going on when I was a kid. Because sometimes I remember thinking, what went wrong up there? who put me in the wrong family? Like, there's some angel that got fired because, the big guy upstairs noticed I was in the completely wrong. Anyway, I didn't really want to call him by his first name because I didn't want him to get upset and sue me, but everything I'm saying is 100% true. So he can't, because the only defense against, lawsuits of libel and stuff is the truth. And what I'm saying is the truth. And if he wants to sue me, he can, but he's going to lose that lawsuit because I have tons of people, to back me up. I have all kinds of witnesses my whole life that can testify to the fact that he was abusive and he was an asshole. And that's why our relationship, anyway, isn't the best. And I call him David because sometimes I feel like David was only really a part of the picture to facilitate my existence. Anyway, sometime in the middle of moving back and forth, we made our way, my mother and I, to this little cow town in the North Panhandle of Texas called Hereford. It's another crack town and meth town. And I kind of bounced back and forth between those two cities until my dad went to prison for the last time, sometime in 8th grade. And when he went to prison for the last time, I remember my mom telling me, hey, your dad went to prison again. It was like a month before the summertime. And she was like, you're not going to go to Abilene this summer. And of course, I didn't vocalize this or verbalize it, but I was definitely relieved. And then she told me he was going to be in jail until I was 23. And I remember being, which isn't right for a kid to feel, but I remember being so relieved that I wouldn't have to deal with that man until I was a man and could stick up for myself. And if anything tells you how bad of a father figure he was, that should, because that's not a natural emotion for a kid. But I think that the traumas and abuses that I withstood, as a child made me grow up pretty quick. So at 13, I was already like, yeah, fuck him. I'll be a man by the time he gets out. I'm not even worried about him anymore. And, whenever you deal with stuff at home, you don't really like people to know about that. You kind of put on a mask for people because you want them to love you based on who you are around them and not who you really are. Because, I don't think I ever wanted anyone's pity. So I remember when people would ask me where my dad was, I would just tell them, oh, he's dead. Yeah, he died. He didn't know how to stay out of trouble and some people killed him. Because, although he wasn't dead in real life, he was definitely dead to me. He was definitely dead to me. And, which is another shitty thing for a kid to say, but at that point I didn't even feel like his child. I just felt like someone the state decided, he was responsible for. Anyway, my dad went to jail, prison, long-term prison. He went Texas prison, which those are hell, because our state focuses on, retribution and, penance. When I knew I didn't have to move back and forth anymore, I started high school here in this little town, and I stayed here in Hereford till and up through graduation, and high school was pretty cool. High school was all right. Like, I wasn't popular, but I wasn't, a nobody either. I think I was more infamous than popular, because everyone knew me, but it wasn't always because they liked me. I was actually the first openly gay male to come out, and that's not a me thing. I'm not saying that. I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. Administrators and teachers have told me that. And when you live in like a Bible Belt, Texas in the South, real conservative city, the county is completely red. Some kids are afraid to come out of the closet and live their true, authentic lives. But I wasn't. I don't think I was concerned at all about what other people felt about me because, it was none of their goddamn business. And nothing that they thought about me could hurt me the way my dad had physically hurt me. So, after you've been abused as a child and after you lived a shitty childhood, everything else just gets exponentially better. If anything, that prepared me for some of the shitty people later on. But Yeah, high school was fun. I was a smart, nerdy kid, actually. I had the math award in my grade, in my class of kids, the class of 2013. I had the math award every year for like 5 years in a row until graduation. And the only reason I didn't get it my senior year is because I took college math, and so I didn't have to take a, a math class my senior year. And yeah, I was a super huge nerd. High school could be its own entire episode, I swear. But yeah, after high school, I graduated, packed my shit, went to New York after my birthday to find myself because I really didn't know what I wanted out of life. And it wasn't so much that I didn't know what I wanted, but I didn't know which path I wanted to take because I had the unique distinction and curse of being able to choose any path in life and knowing that I could be successful at it because, you can't hold me down. I'm not someone that's ever let anything get in his way. So, I had to figure out what I wanted in life, and for that to happen, I needed to go out, explore the world, and on my journey to finding myself, I landed in this picture perfect, postcard looking town in upstate New York called Oswego. It's a port city on the Great Lake Ontario, and it's like living in a postcard. I lived there with my grandmother and I'm going to call him my grandpa because he was with my grandmother for 13, 14 years before he died. And when he died, I was like 20 or so. So, he was there for a good majority of my life, and I grew close to him. Out of all the grandchildren, I got to spend the most time with him. So, I was pretty close with Gypsy. He was a great man. He was a great man. He taught me how to play pool. He taught me some guitar basics watching him play. He was in a band. He was a special ops sniper in Vietnam. He was the coolest thing on earth at the time. He'd written songs and all kinds of stuff. He was a mountain of stories himself, and he could probably be his own episode in this podcast too. Anyway, yeah, I went to New York to find myself, and when I got there, I started writing, which is something I always knew I had a proclivity to. I always know that I was a good writer and I had a way with words because I've always hated my voice. I've always hated it. And so when I became too conscious of my voice, especially around puberty when it decided not to get any deeper than it should have, I resorted to writing as a way of getting feelings across and words and points across without, having to disgust myself. So I became a good writer. I think in fourth grade, I was one of the only people to get a 4 on their writing tax test, which was like the highest score you could get. And fourth grade was your first writing tax. So for me to get one of the highest grades in the state on my first try at the writing tax, I knew that was a big deal. What I remember is it getting my writing teacher a bonus, so you're welcome. I don't even remember her name, honestly. But it was at Ortiz. It was at Ortiz in Abilene, fourth grade. I spent half of that semester in Abilene, the first half, and then the second half, I'd gone to live with my mother in Hereford, and I spent the last half of that semester in Hereford. And I bounced between Bluebonnet and West Central, which are intermediate elementary schools or whatever. At that time, it was just 4th and 5th grade. And back on topic, when it came to writing, I'd started to write in New York, and I just didn't stop. And I tried and tried to get something published for the year since. And because I told myself if I could get a book deal while I was in New York, I wasn't going back to the South. That was my thing. That was my goal. If I could get a book deal, I'm not going back to Podunk, Little Hereford, or Cracktown, USA, Abilene, Texas. I'm gonna be somebody. And I was there, and nothing. No one would look at my manuscript. Nothing. I didn't exist. I wasn't a blimp on anyone important's radar. So I packed my bags. I had school going for me. I had all of these things going for me. And I missed home. And I wasn't able to meet my goal. So I did what anyone would do, and I did it all over again. With my pride wounded, but still intact, I came back to Texas, and I hit the ground running. I continued to write. I started working and going to school. And I was working full time and a half, going to school full time and a half, and sleeping full time. Because if I didn't sleep full time, I wouldn't have been able to do all of the other things that I was taking care of in a good, disposition, or with a good attitude, or with a happy look on my face. I would have stabbed somebody. But I really grinded. I hit the ground so hard, and I started running. I went to AC, which is Amarillo College. They have a campus in Hereford, and I took my basics there so that it would be cheaper to get my degree. I got my associate's degree in psychology while I was working as a waiter at this little Mexican restaurant called Baldo's, and that was a great first job. I always told myself that waiting tables was beneath me because I knew I had, this greater potential inside me somewhere. I knew that I was going to be somebody great. But, in true Fonzie fashion, I did what the fuck I had to do because Mama raised a survivor. And, I decided to take a job waiting tables. I still lived at home, so I didn't have much of a financial responsibility. I waited tables, and I told myself if I was going to be a waiter, and I thought being a waiter was beneath me, then I was going to be the best damn one. And I worked as a waiter for 13 months in total, and in that 13 months, I managed to be best waiter in town for 2 years in a row. I know the math doesn't add up, but I wasn't in charge of the newspaper at the time. The editor, was one of my regulars, and he happened to like me because I knew what the hell I was doing. And after Baldo's, I went to this Mexican restaurant called Lupita's. And for legal purposes, all I'm going to say is I didn't like the way things were being run. And that's where I'm going to leave that conversation. I worked there for like a month. And then I left to Pizza Hut. Oh, I don't think I can even say Pizza Hut. Can I say Pizza Hut without getting sued? I'm going to say Pizza Hut. Anyway, I started working at Pizza Hut as a delivery driver. And that's another place I could talk an entire episode about too, because it was a great place to work. I really like working there. But I don't know how to stay out of trouble. But if I'd thought that delivering pizzas was beneath me, I was going to be the best damn pizza delivery driver for Pizza Hut. And I was corporate Pizza Hut driver of the year 2015. And that's just another example of me not allowing limits to hinder me from moving forward and achieving and success and all of those other convoluted narcissistic things that I can say about myself. But after Pizza Hut, I remember there being a meeting, and all of the uppity ups were at the meeting. Those of us who were, the head of our little department, or, managers, etc. And at the time, I was the head Pizza Hut driver, and I was helping train the general manager, which to me was kind of agitating and irritating, but I loved her to death. She's a great person, but I didn't like being in that position because, I taught her some things here and there, and some of the basics that maybe you didn't necessarily needed to be the general manager to know, but the fact that I was teaching them to her made me feel like, if I am good enough as an employee to teach this person how to be the general manager, then I have what it takes to be a general manager at the store. And I remember, out of nowhere in the middle of this meeting just saying, "Are you ever going to make me a general manager?" And they were like, and I said, "You hesitated. Bye. Deuces." And then I started working at Taco Bell the next day because I do not know how to not have a job, unlike my dad. And again, I told myself, if working at Taco Bell is beneath you, Fonzie, then you need to be the best damn Taco Bell employee there is. And I eventually became the general manager of that store. And at 23, I was the youngest general manager in town. if not definitely the youngest general manager north of Lubbock, Texas. And that was cool. I mean, I liked being the boss somewhere. It was something that I felt was fitting. But I also know that I was 23 at the time. But I knew that I had some growing to do. And right around the time I was getting ready to leave, because I can't be in the same place for too long. I'm a bit of a gypsy in that way. Right around the time I was getting ready to leave, social injustice was the main topic right now. At the time, because, Eric Gardner and people were getting killed in the streets for breathing. I both thought that the police complex as a whole in our country needed reform, and that someone should be responsible for reforming it. And I also felt as though the only real way to inspire change in something as fundamental as a police department anywhere in this country, let alone the entire police complex throughout the country, would really be from the inside out. So I found interest in being a police officer so that I could, affect change in whatever way I saw fit from the inside. And I signed up for police academy, and I never ended up making it into police academy because I got waitlisted. Too many people had applied to be police officers, and they only accept, like 23, 24 or whatever people, and there were 50 people that applied, and of those 50, 24 people were being sponsored by their local police departments. And I was going in raw. I was all by myself. I didn't have an entire police department in my city sponsoring me to go to this police academy. So I got waitlisted, which was fine, because at the time I was working at this pet food manufacturer here in town. And you can make some good money there if you hustle, which is all I know how to do. So I was there for 4 days and, was looked at to be manager. And some bullshit happened there. But work Michigas will be an entirely different episode. The reason I got fired, the first time I ever got fired, the reason I got fired from there is kind of funny to me in retrospect. It wasn't funny at the time, but in retrospect, it's freaking hilarious. And from there, I went to a beef packing plant in Hereford, where I currently work now, with the same fire and drive, and with the same intention that if working in a meat packing plant was beneath me, then I was going to be, a bad motherfucker and show them exactly what I could do and what I was capable of. And so far, so good. I feel like the job and the tasks that I'm in charge of and doing, I feel as though I'm doing the work I should have been doing this whole time. And that's what I'll say about my current job, so that I don't endanger it. But yeah, working where I work now is great, and I'm currently working towards getting 2 degrees by double majoring in political science studies and psychology, in hopes of going on to law school after those are completed, because I'm gonna be president someday. And of course, I'm still writing. I finally got published. I published my first book last year in November, and it's called Glory, and I'm sure I'll be plugging that like a son of a bitch throughout the podcast, so I'm not going to waste your time now. But that's a quick list of all of the things that I'm involved in and doing right now, and all while dealing with mental illness and depression and anxiety and all of those other things that I'll make time for in the next 2 or 3 episodes. But yeah, that's pretty much a quick, short pamphlet of my life so far, and I look forward to digging in deeper into certain segments of that along the journey of this podcast. And I hope you enjoyed this last hour or so, because on top of some storytelling, I really wanted to make sure that that I got this down honestly because for a good chunk of my life, I was so ashamed for all of those years. I was so ashamed of my upbringing, the circumstance in which I was born into. I feared that people wouldn't love me for me. They would be too concerned or judge me about, where I came from and all of that other good stuff, which is a fear that I think can be defended in a way. But if I've told you anything about the history of my life, aside from what I spoke just now, I want you to know that there's a justification in that lie. Because in a way, to quote somebody, in a way that the lie of it all is much more honest because I created it as an extension of my art, in my opinion, because all of the things that I said to get people to love me for me and not for where, the truth of what I really was or who I really came from or the circumstance into which I was born into, that filter or mask that I put on for people, not so much in a fake way, but in an act of self-preservation, I think that can be really telling of the traumas that I experienced. So, I wanted to be as honest as I could with this episode today because anyone that meets me from here on out, I wanted them to know the real story. And as I carry on telling my story in the next few episodes and eventually this entire show, I wanted anyone from here on out to know what they know about me, to know me for me, and if they didn't like me based on my upbringing or they didn't like me based on any of this stuff in this podcast, they could fuck off. Because when you're 24, you really don't have time for people's bullshit. And I even say, I said 24. Well, let me explain. This coronavirus fucked up me being able to celebrate my 25th birthday, so I'm not counting it. I'm going to be 24 again this year. We're just going to re-up in June of next year, 2021. Hopefully everything's back to normal. Okay guys, this episode is getting a little long, so I'm going to cut this turd short right here, and we can pick up where we left off in a future episode, because it's time for Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day. If someone tells you that you're too much, I like to take that as a compliment, and you should too, because they're right. I am too much. I'm loud, I'm funny, I like to spread joy and good vibes, and I like to be a light for people having a dark day. I am too much. And do you want to know why I take that as a compliment? Because if I'm too much, that means people can't make me feel like I'm not enough. Now I'm going to say that again. If I'm too much, that means I can't allow people to make me feel like I'm not good enough. The hell do you mean I'm not good enough? You just said I was too much. You can't be too much and not enough at the same damn time. It doesn't work that way. That kind of melts any feelings of inadequacy away, doesn't it? It doesn't allow those feelings of self-doubt to flourish. Because the two can't exist in the same place. You see? You are good enough. You were meant to be here in this moment in time. The world needs you, and whatever you have to offer it. You're welcome. Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day. With that being said, we've officially made it to the end of the first ever episode of Ask Fonzie Anything. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire episode. If you want to hear more, I have tons of episodes posted already, and I'll post new episodes whenever I want. No, but seriously though, usually Mondays, and when the show starts growing, I'll start releasing episodes twice a week or something. If you like the show, it is available almost everywhere podcasts can be heard, including Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Make sure you add, like, subscribe, or follow me on my social media profiles. It's at Fonzie Graziano on everything, so you don't have to worry about missing an episode. Make sure and send me DMs to request episode discussion topics. You can write into me if you need advice. I've been told I'm an infinite spring of wisdom. I can definitely give you an outside perspective. I'll tell you what I would do anyway. And who knows, your letter might be the one I answer in the next episode. If you like, you can directly support the podcast. There are links in the bio to my Patreon and Anchor Direct. Or you can just buy one of my books. My first book, Glory, is available in print on Amazon.com and Walmart.com. The ebook is available on Kindle, and there is an audiobook available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes.com, I think, but don't quote me on that. Also, my second book, Raindrops and Other Lullabies, which was originally due for release earlier this year, but it's been pushed back twice due to the coronavirus. It'll definitely be out before the end of the year, though. If you go to my website, not only can you download and read PDF previews of both books, but you can also listen to a sample of the audiobook of Glory, and if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get an exclusive updates on what I'm working on, and promo codes, and sales, and discount info. And last but not least, I just want to remind y'all to be a rainbow in somebody's cloud, be kind to yourself and others, unless they talk to you crazy, and wash your fucking hands and wear your goddamn mask. I want to go to the bar. We'll get through this together. In the next episode, I'll be talking about my hobbies, what I like to do for fun, and my busy as shit schedule. Thank you for listening. I think you're pretty cool. I don't care what they say about you. Bye.